Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host, and today we're going to be talking about the 2024 World Final Round results from the International Chocolate Awards. That's going to be a start. We're going to be talking about other things as well, but that's what we're going to do. We're going to be taking a deep dive look at what we can learn from the awards. Now, this is if you are an entrant, you want to know how you did compared with the rest of the field. Or if you're not an entrant and you're considering entering the awards, what can you learn from previous awards? And along the way, we are going to get into a deep dive of the craziness associated with trying to analyze these awards. But in the meantime, what I want to do is remind everybody that this episode of Pod Save Chocolate is sponsored by the members of The Chocolate Life. Here is the homepage of The Chocolate Life. Right now, you can go there and you can click on the green button up here. It says account for me, right? If you're not logged in or you're not a member, it will say join and you can become a member of The Chocolate Life. I produce all of this content at no charge and give it away for free to everybody. And your support is what makes that all possible. I also want to remind everybody that no matter where you might be calling from, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether it's on Facebook, what you can do is you can go into the live chat on YouTube or the comments on LinkedIn and Facebook, and you can just let me know where in the world you're connecting from, where you're watching from. And you also, if you have any questions or any comments about what it is that I'm going to be talking about during this episode, you can let me know. Right? I'm doing things a little bit differently. If you're a regular watcher here, you'll notice that I'm going to start playing with my screen to make things a little more visible. Now, for every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, I put together a post. And this is the post for today's episode. Right? And what it does is it provides archive links, but it's also a run of show. What is it that I'm going to be talking about during the course of the episode? And so you don't need to follow along and grab the links during the live stream, right? You can load this page in a browser separate from the one you're watching this on or listening to this on, and you can follow along with what's going on screen. So I want to, I'm just going to jump in, right, and say why, right? Why do this? And this is not the first time that I've done this. I mean, the first time I've done it really was in about 2018, I think, was the first year that I did this. I'm going to hide this. I'm going to make it a little, oops, nope. I'm going to make it, I'm sorry, I'm going to make this a little more visible. Again, this is a new format for me. So the world of specialty chocolate is woefully unself-aware, right? What it is that we know about the world of specialty chocolate, whether you want to call it artisan or craft or bean to bar, however it is you want to call it, there's not a whole lot of understanding of who the players are and what they're doing. And so an analysis of the major awards program gives me an opportunity to go in and take a look at very highly visible results that are very highly followed by members of the community. And the real question is that, not the real question is, but the problem is that the results are presented in a way that is very, very difficult to understand. You have to scroll through the page. Well, rather than let me go to the page. So there's a link to the page here. So here's the list of awards for this year. I'm linking directly to the page, and so you'll see that it's just I've got a title, World Finals. I've got a Best in Competition, a plain, and so if I want to find out, hey, did Cacao Suyo win anything this year? What I can do is I can find, oh, wow, the phrase Cacao Suyo appears 41 times on the page. That's pretty cool. But I find here that, so Vigdis Rosenkilde says that Thea Broma and Versiones SAC, Cacao Suyo makes the chocolate for her. And it's cacao that appears 41 times. Cacao Suyo may only appear 7 times. And so I want to find out if Cacao Suyo won anything. I can see that they did, but I can also see that their mentioned more times as somebody who's making chocolate for someone else. And this is a laborious process going through and figuring out. You can see how many people won awards, how many categories are there. I mean, this is really, really challenging to go and decode. And this is what it is that I have done by hand for previous encounters with this. So I want to give you an idea about just what a challenge this is. So what I've done is I have here is what that page looks like in a this is in Google Sheets. So this is what this page looks like in a spreadsheet. And what you can see is that basically all the information, right, is in one column, right, in a table, right? And there is some things which are formatted differently. So part of the challenge that I have is how do I go about deconstructing this information so that like information is in the same column of the sheet so I can do some analysis with it. And then I also need to figure out what's going on here with these errors. And it turns out that if we were to go look at the results page, let me go back to the results page, what we'll see that there's this plus sign in front of some of the in some of the entries, and any spreadsheet will look at a plus and say this is a part of a formula. And so if you don't have the information that you're looking for, if it's not a valid formula, it gives an error. And for some reason, I'm not entirely sure, some of these errors interpreted as names. Not sure why that is, but I know that there's an error there. Right? Now, also, there's a bunch of other information, which is, oh my gosh, some of these entries include URLs. Now, this little thing that's showing up right here is a preview. That's a part of Arc, which is the browser that I use. This is not something that will happen, I think, generically if you're using Excel or Numbers or some other spreadsheet. This is one of the reasons why I use Arc and why I look at worksheets in a browser is so that I can interrogate the URLs without actually having to leave the context that I'm looking at. And so you can see here that there's a lot of stuff that needs to get done. I need to grab the award level, gold, silver, bronze, right? I've got the country here, which is between parentheses. I've got the name of the bar, which is Nicoliso 70%. There's a percentage here, and I want to grab that percentage and do something with it, right? This 87.3 number refers to the winning score. So there's all sorts of data that is here, right? That if I want to extract it, I need to do it by hand. Right? But I learned something. I learned something from doing the previous episode of Pod Safe Chocolate, where I used Google Gemini to extract data from pages. And so I asked myself, can I use Google Gemini to extract data from pages? And so if I go and take a look, so I got some keepers. So the answer is yes, I can. It turns out that I can create prompts and I can iterate on prompts, which will enable me to take the data that exists on one of these pages and extract it, do some transformations on it, and put data into separate columns in a spreadsheet. And this is what this data looks like once I have transformed it into using the set of Google prompts that I put together. So what I have here is in the first column is that every single entry, right, has its category of award. And then every single line, so a line is a winner, right? Every single winner has the category at one end and the subcategory at one end and the award level it got, right? I was able to grab the score, right? And get rid of the extra parentheses that were around it. I was able to get the name of the company. I was able to extract the website URL and put it into a separate column. I was able to extract the country they're in, the name of the winning product. The cacao percentage is now in a column, when it's listed, is now in a column all its own. And I was able to take the notes, right? And then to be able to put them into their own columns. Now, every time there was one of these pluses, right, which said this is a special award, I was able to grab, right, and put each one of those into its own column. So how many, right, I can go here, gold, gold, gold. I can find out how many people were given awards for gold in the direct traded category or in the organic category. This was all done over the course of half an hour fumbling, maybe a little longer than that, because Gemini takes its time doing whatever it is that it wants to do, right? But I was able to get a prompt, go away, do other work, come back and go, oh, here is the report, realize that there was something else that I needed to do, and then iterate on that. So I've got a series of maybe half a dozen, somewhere between 6 and 10 prompts, which I will be able to concatenate into one prompt. And I will be able to do this for for future awards. And so what is it that I can learn by doing this? Right? And that's what this is all about. So so here is the important part. And I copied this information that I got as a summary of these into a separate document. I'm gonna put this document in the post for today's episode so you can follow along. So the winner summary, number one, Frisholm in Denmark, right, gave 18 awards, which turns out to be more than 6% of all of the awards given were given to one's company, Frisholm in Denmark. The summary here is this 18 awards is notable for its breadth. Frisholm got 4 golds, 6 silvers, 8 bronzes across multiple categories: plain bars, flavored bars, and filled chocolate categories. So Frisholm is doing something that the judges really, really like, right? And they are achieving high levels. And I could go through, now that I have the spreadsheet, or now that the spreadsheet is available, what I can do is I can have Gemini query the spreadsheet directly. And I can say start doing some analysis. I know that I can do that analysis within the spreadsheet. I'm not certain. I've tried experimenting with it, and the results are not as helpful as I'd hoped that they'd be. Right? So after Frisholm, we have Fuwan in Taiwan, won 15 awards. Goodnow Farms took 11. Right. And then we have Italian confectioners, Guido Castagna, Bellantoni Cioccolato, winning 9 and 7 awards, respectively. And so in the spreadsheet that I have, one of the things that I looked at was I did an analysis of this by gold and silver or bronze. So this was something I asked Gemini to do, which is to go through the table and then generate a new table and reorganize the table for me. I can't tell you how much work that is to do by hand, but I was able to have an agent. This is a good use of AI. This is a very, very good use of AI, right? Because what it's doing is it's taking a repetitive, tedious, painstakingly laborious task, and without my need to know how to program in Python or program in Perl or program in JavaScript or anything else, all I have to do is figure out how to write a test prompt, right? And I haven't even done any work to say, here is the personality of the agent that I want to look at. So there's a lot of room for flexibility here in terms of doing this. So anyway, so what we'll find out is that Frisholm, they won 18 awards, 4 gold, 4 silver, and bronze. Now, what I asked Gemini to do in the spreadsheet, in the Google Docs, in the Google Sheets to do, was to run me a summary of, give me a count of the number of times the word Scandinavia appears in this column. It didn't want to do that. What it wanted to do is it wanted to go to the country column and then assign its own regions to it. So Oceania is a region. There's a difference between Asia and Southeast Asia. I didn't want to get to that level of specificity, so I ended up using a spreadsheet function, which is called COUNTIF, right? And I was able to go through and specify a range and say, if the text string is Asia, count it. And so what we do is we find that, right, from this list, right, we have 29 winners. So 29 winning entries were from Asia, right? I don't know where in Asia. Didn't get to that level of specificity. I could do a similar kind of entry, a similar kind of detail using COUNTIF for all of these. I will experiment to see if Gemini can do a better job of being able to pull the data out of here and do this. But we find that 29 winning entries came from companies located in Asia, 25 from North America, which the definition is Canada, the United States, Mexico, and the Caribbean, right? Central America, South America. So this is the first time I ever did this. And so, but now all of my prompts are reusable, and I can figure out how to automate some of these things. And so what would normally take me hours and hours and hours over the course of multiple days, I was able to do in less than an hour of active time. So I want to give a quick shout out to Jin Kim, who's from LA, I believe, or Southern California. Years ago, I did a taste test party with overall world ICA winners for 2016, 2018, the Bona Selvamaya, Shitel Chujo. If the ICA site wasn't so clumsy, I would have done it more often. Jin, I'm going to get to that. I am going to get to that. One of the things that I want to do, one of the things that I could do, is I could figure out how to publish parts of this table. Not this table, but this table. So you could say, here was the name of the winning entry. And so I could say, here's the name of the winner, here's the name of the winning entry. And I could put that in a table, right? And you would be able to go take a look at it, and it would be very, very easy to work at. This is not something that's going to be coming soon, because there's no way for me to monetize that effort. Because there's just no easy way for me to monetize that effort. I need to figure out how I'm going to get paid to do that work. But nonetheless, I have all of the basic information necessary to do that. I could put it into a database. I could have my developer write a routine so you could sort through it. I mean, it could be done. I could just post the spreadsheet, right? Don't want to do that for a bunch of different reasons, but I did want to let everybody know that. So what I did is I ordered this by my note here is GSB, gold, silver, bronze. Right. So I organized the list by the total awards, gold, silver, bronze, so I could do this high level. One of the things that I noticed, right, is if I go take a list at the winners, right, I get a certain number of rows. 241, right, is there. But if I go to here, what I do is, excuse me, not this one. Right? I just launched an application. It may take over my screen here. But in any event, I've got gold, silver, bronze. I've got a different count. It's not the same count, right? And then I go here and I've got a different count again. And the reason why I asked Gemini, I said, hey, I've noticed that there are differences in the number of counts. What accounts for the differences, right? Normally, this would be an extremely tedious, painstakingly comparison of the different worksheets in order for me to be able to figure it out. And part of the answer, not the entire answer, but most of the answer can be seen, right, when we look at this part of the worksheet. You'll notice I've got the scores here of some of the highest ranking ones. These are the best in competition in these categories. These are counted twice. And so if you take a look at the winners, just the winning companies, And then what you do is you take a list of the number of awards. What you'll do is the list of winning companies, the list of awards in different, because you're counting different things in different ways, you end up with different numbers, right? And I was able to determine this in under 5 minutes. I would ask the question, I walked away, figuratively, I went to another task on my computer and I came back, right? And I was able to figure it out, right? And I was Gemini said, "This is where the source is, and here's an example of it." And because I got an example of where the mismatch was, I was able to go and confirm that the reason why I was running into these differences in counts was that each one of these things counts different things. And whew, that made me feel really, really good. So it made me feel more confident, right? There are some other areas where I'm not entirely sure what's going on. So, for example, I mean, this is just a note to myself. We have in Ganache's Palais unflavored milk chocolate gold. We have a 90% score by Pietro Macellaro Pasticceria Agricola on Cilentana. And for some reason, we go all the way out here. And what we do is we find there was a special award for craft. And I don't know where that came from. I don't know if Gemini hallucinated it or what. I now need to go and do a very, very detailed exploration of the data that was scraped rather than the data on the page. Or I actually need to do both, the data on the page and the data that was scraped, the data that were scraped, in order to be able to figure out where this came from. Because where I can go and in my instructions say, do this, don't do this, pay attention, right? So it's important. But again, for me to go and find every single place where there is an error here, right? And what it is it says gold here, growing country. To go and find every single occurrence of this and pop it into a unique column consistently across, 800 rows, right? As you might imagine, is an insanely tedious task. It takes tons of hours, tons of hours, tons of hours. And so I was really, really happy to be able to do all of this work in under an hour yesterday, as you might imagine. And it exported the tables into spreadsheets. And what I did is I copied the table from one spreadsheet into this workbook, and I copied another spreadsheet into this workbook, and I was able to go back and forth rather than have back and forth between pages in a workbook rather than between different worksheets, which is pretty tedious. So I've got awards by gold, silver, and bronze, awards by category. Again, this is another thing that's incredibly tedious to try to figure out how to do, in part because you can see that in this year's awards, there were 45 different categories. Spreads with milk chocolate, spreads with white chocolate, spreads with dark chocolate, no milk powder. Um, you know, so you can see that that going through and counting all of these things up is a real challenge. If what it is that I need to do is to do all the work of moving the data around from this page by hand, which is what I'd been doing in previous years. Right? So I've got awards by category, and what I find that is in the plain origin dark chocolate bars were 21 total awards, right? 1 gold, 4 silver, 16 bronze. And what we do is we find that, the micro batch plain origin, 84% and lower, is the most highly awarded category, right? With 42 overall awards, right? But not that many golds. And this is something that I know from looking at previous years, is that there are a large number of categories where no golds were given. Um, and the most golds given in any category was 2, which I think shows an amazing amount of restraint. Because my memory is in previous years, this distribution was not as lopsided. But this tells me how many different kinds of awards were in different categories. And what I can do is I can say the micro batch, plain origin, dark category, and dark chocolate bars with flavorings and inclusions, right? The two of them won 82 awards, right? I should notice that 42 is, of course, the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything, which means that micro batch plain dark origin chocolate bars, at least in the 2024 World Final round, is that answer. So I can say that two categories won 82 of 292 awards, and this number here, 292, is just making sure it's a checksum to make sure that things are working. So what I want to do is also point out something else that this allowed me to do. Is it turns out that this year in the International Chocolate Awards, one of the things that they did, I'm going to go to this competition winners, is one of the things that they did this year is they have the final winners, and somewhere else they there may be a link on the page where they posted the grand jury finalists. And so what I was able to do is I was able to say to Gemini, "Hey Gemini, tell me the differences between the the companies that won awards and the companies that didn't win awards." Right. So I've got the list of grand jury finalists and what products were entered. And then I went to see, is there a match between that and the award winners? And oh my gosh, it did this in 2 minutes for me. Right. And guess what? Here is a list. So here is a list of companies, right, that were grand jury finalists. And here is the product that they entered. So we find that now we don't know why. So these are companies whose scores did not win them awards. They did not get a gold or silver or bronze. And there's no cutoff here. They're just, so it's below whatever the bottom score is for bronze. And we could figure that out. I could say, what is the minimum of the score that bronze scores? And so you had to get below that number in order not to be considered for bronze. I can now calculate that. I can say, ooh, I'm a nerd about this. I'm a geek. But here is a list of all of the companies that were submitted an entry into the world finals, into the world final round, and specifically the names of the product that did not win. Right. And what I find is that, right, I don't have a list of unique winner names. I do. Actually, I do have a unique win. Here's a list of unique winner names. And so what I'll do is I'll find that from here all the way to here, there were 118 winning companies. And what I have here is we have those 118 companies, right, there were 107 others that did not win an award. So that's not quite true. So Goodnow Farms is on both lists, but here are the products that didn't win awards. So what I would have to do is write my script a different way, which says, or write another prompt which says, give me the list of unique companies on this list. I know the products that did not win, but what I want to do is I want to find unique names. But fortunately, this is something I can ask Gemini to do for me. So it gives me a really, really interesting way. So what this says to me is I have 107 unique entries, 106 unique entries that didn't win awards. There are many duplicates, so I don't know the number of individual companies here. But what this does is it gives me an idea. It says there were 107 plus 200 and, well, getting rid of the 4 at the top. So 236, right? Discounting the top category here, 236. So 107 plus 236. What we find is that about 2/3 of all of the companies who entered, or all of the individual entrants, about 2/3 of them were given an award. So that's interesting information. What we'll find also, I don't know why there's no award score here. There's lots of really, I need to go and do individual little pickups. But what this does is it tells me that, A, if you want to win an award, enter lots of different categories with lots of different things, right? And that what you may want to do is you may want to consider categories that are either extremely crowded or not as crowded, right? You want to stand out. So these would be strategies and enter a lot of things. I did an analysis a couple of years ago where I said, I think you need to enter at least 3 items. And that makes sense. If 2/3 of the entries won an award, you'd have to enter at least 3 entries in order to be reasonably assured that you would win at least one award. So that's one thing. So at least 3 entries. The more you enter, the better job you're able to do. And what you may want to do is may want to stay out of categories that are very highly competitive, unless your work is really good, right? You may want to strategically say, ooh, here's milk chocolate bars with a filling, only 3 awards. Maybe if I get something which is really, really spectacular, I think I'm going to enter that category rather than the microbatch plain origin dark bar category, right? Because there's lots and lots of competition there. So this is one way that you can go and take a look at how to use this. So, um, I did another one. I said, okay, give me all the different um, special distinction awards, right? And then tell me. So local ingredients 12 times, chocolate maker 6 times, gastronomic 6 times. So it gives me an idea of what it is that the judges are looking for and what they're awarding. So if I were to do a milk chocolate bar with a filling, I'd want that filling to be from a local ingredient, right? This notion of gastronomic, it's an unusual flavor combination. They're not so big on the use of alcohol. They're not so big on um, reinterpreting classic flavors. They like things that are directly traded. They like eclectic flavors, right? All of this analysis will give you a clue, right, as to how you might want to organize your entries into the awards. What categories you might want to enter, right? It's and then there's some really, really wonderful things. One of the reasons why I love to do this, right, is I get to learn a lot of interesting vocabulary. So here we are at the very bottom. There's this thing here called the boero. And what is a boero? And I'm probably using a Portuguese pronunciation, but I believe it's an Italian term. And the word basically is cherry cordial. So the boero is a term which is used to describe a cherry that has been soaked in alcohol. That alcohol soaked cherry has probably been wrapped in fondant, right? And which has got an enzyme which will break the fondant down. And then before the fondant has a chance to break down, it is covered in chocolate. And then it's left to sit there, and then the fondant will liquefy. And that's what a boero is. I had to go look it up. I was like, why are they doing a special distinction from a boero? Right. And I'm going, oh, this is why. It's a really, really cool thing. Right. And that's really, really nice. So for me, part of the discovery, part of the fun, part of the joy of looking at this thing is finding interesting connections in the data that are next to impossible to spot, right? If you're intimately connected with the judging process, right? And to find out little bits of trivia like this. I did, before yesterday, I didn't know what a boero was. So for me, that's really, really cool. Now, one of the things that I did that I was able to go through and very, very quickly, I didn't spend a huge amount of time on this. I only did one prompt and I didn't really refine it. Is I said, hey, can you go compare the 2024 International Chocolate Award final with the 2024 Academy of Chocolate Awards? Right? And can you give me a list which includes the companies that are on both awards? So, for example, Good Now Farms won an award for the International Chocolate Awards, and it also won awards at the Academy of Chocolate Awards. Now, I haven't done anything to go and break these out, so I see that in both competitions it won for something called limited release, right, and limited release, and it won caramelized onion, I believe, in both places. So there's some additional work to do, but I thought this was pretty cool. So Baiani from Brazil won with the same product in both awards. Peradai, I believe from Thailand, um, won for their Phuket Dark 70% white flowers. I also noticed that there is inconsistency in the way the organizers enter their data. So here we have an N dash with a space on either side here, but the word with, and here we have nothing, and they've got an N dash on this side. It's inconsistencies like that that make doing this work much, much harder than it needs to be, right? And which is one of the reasons why I was really, really happy. But we find that Frizz Home Chocolate, Cascao Suyo, Castronovo, all of these companies won awards in both competitions, which I think is really, really cool. And would, again, be incredibly challenging for me to be able to figure out. So we're a little more than I'm a little more than halfway through, and it's a question for me to those of you who might be watching this: is this interesting to you? Is the idea of knowing quickly, right, right, rather than having to go and look at um, this page? Uh, I'm sorry. Um, 24. So rather than having to go and look at this page with the way the data are presented, right, is it easier? Is it helpful? Right? And do you want more of the data presented in much more straightforward, understandable ways? Right? Uh, I think the answer to that question is yes. Right? But and it um, may be redundant to ask, but just curious, right? About your thoughts about it. And in the process of looking at this, what do you think about what might be missing that you would like or to do? Because this is all about just quick prompts that I can figure out a way to concatenate, right? And just run this across um, multiple competitions, which I plan to do. So here's an interesting list. Here's a company name and the products across both awards, right? And here's a list of companies who entered the Academy of Chocolate Awards, but their names do not appear in the um, International Chocolate Awards list. This is the winners list, not the grand finalist list. I would need to go and do this. So I haven't, the the Academy of Chocolate Awards, right? As challenging as the International Chocolate Awards is, hold on a second. As challenging as the International Chocolate Awards is to decode, the Academy of Chocolate Awards is even harder. I mean, it's insanely difficult to do. Uh, and part of it, here's one of the challenges, right? So here we see this entry, Canvella Chocolate is the winner, but there's no URL, right? So I have no idea where this company is. I don't necessarily. Ideally, what I've got is not only the URL to the company, but this is a link to the shopping cart page. So if I'm interested in it, I can find, or at least the description page on the website. But notice that I have 75% here. Let me zoom up on this. Notice that I have 75% here, right? But in the above it, what I've got is 72% is in the middle. Ecuador is misspelled, right? But notice that there is a space here, and there's no space here, and no space here, right? So these are just the little things that make decoding these things really, really challenging, right? And as hard, again, as the International Chocolate Awards is, the Academy of Chocolate Awards is even harder. But what I was able to do, I said, hey, um, Gemini, take this result this table that you've already generated, go to this URL, scrape the page, and find me names that are on the page that are not in the table, right? Now, in the future, what I'll be able to do is I'm able to take this data, put it into two separate worksheets, and then what I'll be able to do is to be able to refer to the worksheets. And so it should be faster because I'll scrape it once. It doesn't have to reinterpret the page every single time. So that'll be very, very cool. So quick shout out again to Jen, who says, at least to me, this is 100% relevant and useful. And so, yeah, no, I want to do more. So what it's just interesting. We find that Hinda and Vera, right? Now, and this is where we need to be really, really careful. I see that Kesho is here, and if I go to the grand jury finalists, not winners, I seem to remember seeing Kesho here. But notice what we've got Kesho spelled differently, right? So we have a diacritic over this one, and then I've got Kesho with a diacritic and some Japanese characters. And so when I did this, it says Kesho is here, and it's spelled differently. One of the things that this says is what I need to do is I need to create a data dictionary, and I would say, oh, when you see any of these instances, it means this. And so that way, what I can do, I can go and train the agent to know about these things. So I could say, for example, this is something that I want to do eventually. So if I were to run here and I would say arhuacos, I could have a dictionary that says anytime you see the word arhuacos in the winning product name, right, enter Colombia into the cocoa origin column. And so, yeah, you can see what I can do. So Chuno is going to be Nicaragua. La Dalia is going to be Nicaragua. Barba is Opayo. I happen to know all of these are Ingaman cacaos. And so I could put a farmer name or a producer name, and I've got this data dictionary that I could use, right? So this is, obviously Guayas is Ecuador. I saw misspelling, so I could have a data dictionary of misspellings. I mean, this is, as you might imagine, it is an insane amount of work, right? But I think it is worth doing. And what this has done is it's given me a sense of the power of what can be done, even with fairly naive prompt skills, which is where I describe what my skills are in terms of writing prompts. So I just wanted to share that with this. The next thing I want to do is I want to talk about. So if I were to go to the Academy of Chocolate Awards, I have the 2024 awards results. I'd have to go here, and what I can do is what's going on here? So we have second phase and this. Notice that. So this is not a page which can be easily decoded by an AI agent, right? I have discovered because it may not be able to it may not be able to follow the URLs. It might be able to grab this URL, right? Right. But again, I could send Gemini to this page previous years and say, grab me the URLs for all of these pages, right? And put it into a document. Yay. That I can do. But it turns out that for one reason or another, for lots of different reasons, I was unable to do that with the International Chocolate Awards pages, right? So here's a challenge, right? So the first one of which is here's the winners in the International Chocolate Awards, right? On the chocolateawards.com website. And here is the list of winners on the Enter Chocolate Awards websites. We have two different websites, and they have overlapping lists, and those lists are not identical. Right? And so a lot of what it is that I tried to do is So I couldn't get Gemini to scrape either of these pages. One of the reasons why Gemini can't scrape this page, let me go through. One of the reasons, I'm just reloading the page. One of the reasons why Gemini can't scrape this page is I get to the bottom of the page and it loads more. And I get to the bottom of the page and it loads more. And I get to the bottom of this page and I find out, oh my gosh, it loads more until I get to the bottom of this page and I find out that the Enter.Chocolate Awards website only provides winning entries. And this is the professional, it says professional up here. This is the professional website. It only goes back to 2018. So I have to go to the legacy website, right? The non-professional website, go to the awards page. And what I do is I find, oh my gosh, the first 3 entries have, this is the winners page. It has nothing to do with awards. It's a blog page. And guess what? It only loads 3 entries at a time. And so, and not only that, but it's not always clear that, is this actually, I mean, I have to open a new window. I have to go and explore these things manually to find out, oh my gosh, Pearls of the Mediterranean, judging, right? It talks about scores. So I click here. Right? So as you can see, this is the Italian Mediterranean Craft Chocolatier Competition 2023. Right? And you can see that the organization, this just sucks. But again, what has happened is I just it's non-trivial to try to go and figure out what it is that I need to know. And then what you'll do is you'll find that this list, so I've got to go through and 3 entries at a time, right? So I want to go back and I want to find the first entries, which go back to 2012, right? I did this a couple of times yesterday. Number one, the page will automatically reload for one reason. It went, well, when it runs out of memory, it will, or it gets memory constrained, it will offload what's here and it'll reload the page. But I have to go a huge way down in order I can get some awards, right? So what I find is that the legacy site at chocolateawards.com, there are some winners through 2021, 22, and then we have one more which was from 2023, separated by, oh, best chocolate in the world 2022. This is the world finals for 2022. You'll see there's this, right? And so it turns out that these 2 sites, right, have different things. So number one of which is that there are almost no top level links in the Enter Chocolate Awards site where you can go and get the grand jury finalists. So I'm just going to go and figure out, right, is there a link on the 2019 world? Oh my gosh. Oh no. What happened? Right? This is a 404 page, right? What happens is I went and said, oh my gosh, I'm on the professional website and I want to find out who the winners were in the world finals in 2019. And guess what? The page doesn't exist. Oh my gosh, right? And so what I have to do is I have to hope, does this page, right, exist on the legacy website? And it turns out it does, right? But it also turns out that this is not, right, an isolated problem. This is not the only time that this shows up. So I went and, because this is just the kind of guy I am, let me go back to, um, I went and said, I want to find out if I can automate downloading all of the entries from every international chocolate awards. Can I spider it? Can I get Gemini to go to this page and download. The answer is it can't, right? And I went to the enter and I said, oh, it only goes back to 2018. So I went to the legacy website and found it went back to 2012. And so what did I do? Right. So you can't see this. This was something that I did. Let me see if I can find my cursor. Let me get rid of this gray. This was something that I did so that I could recognize um, hidden rows. So what I did is I went all the way back to 2012 on the legacy website, so chocolatewars.com, and grabbed the URL of each of the pages, right? And I did that all the way through 2012 to 2016, right? 2017. And one of the things you'll find is, let's say, oh, right, how many awards rounds, how many competition rounds, Grand Journey finalists and others, were in 2017, and how many were there? And this is both the final grand jury finalists and the finals. We find out that there's a different amount, 25 and 23. This may be the difference in the grand jury finalists not being published or being published in a different place. And what I did was I discovered that going past very recent times. So here is a list up here in 2019, right? Here is the world finals, right? On the professional website, it generates a 404. It generates an error. Page cannot be found. But it does work on there is a URL on the legacy site, right? It's missing Central American competition winners. Doesn't work on the professional site, right? It is available on the on the legacy site. So this is a list from here to here. Let's grab the first one. This is a list from here to here, right, of all the errors I have found so far, right? And I still have a bunch of work to do, right, in the 2023, 2024, 2025 to make sure that they actually all work and to be able to. So the reason I'm doing this is, number one, is I want the data. I want to be able to point Gemini to this page. And so grab the data off this page. Right? And I can't do that if the page doesn't exist. Right? And I noticed this when I did ask Gemini to do this. It said, can't find the page, can't find the page, can't find the page. And I'm going, what the heck is going on? It can't find the page. Now, my goal here is, listen, number one, right? I want to recognize off the top of the head to everybody, right, is that it is hugely challenging, right, to be consistent and 100% accurate. I know that. I mean, I don't meet that level of, I don't come close to that level of perfection on the Chocolate Life, right? So I recognize it in myself. But this is a resource that the competition organizers publish, right? And we don't have access to, right? And if we don't have access to it, the competition might as well not have happened, right? In my opinion, right? So what I'm going to do is, I'm not doing this to call them out. I'm recognizing this is an insanely difficult challenge. Right? On my end, it's insanely difficult because the data are in different formats and in different locations. And what I need to do is, because they have refused to just export the data out of their database into a flat file. It contains only specific data, right, that they control over. They've just refused every time I have asked the organizers of the International Chocolate Awards to do that for me. They have said no. Right? So I have to go, right, and figure out, how do I go about getting the publicly available data and working with it. And this is how I do it. So, so my plan is to send the results of this worksheet, right? That to say, to them, listen, I have gone through and clicked on every single one of these, right? And here is the list of broken links that you might want to fix, right? Uh, and what you might want to do is just dedupe the lists, right? Just put all of the lists in one place and link to them, right? So it was like trying to contain two separate lists identically, right, in the same order. I mean, one of the things that's not obvious, right, is that when you go through here, is that they the order of things that are published on the professional website versus the order of things that are published on the non-professional website is different. It's like, who cares, right? And not only that, but there are duplicates. I mean, there are places in the legacy website, the non-pro website, where the same results are posted 2 times. And in one indication, one for one competition, it's 3 times. And one of the challenges I need to come up with is, are the pages identical and are they different? Or are they different? And which one of the versions is the one that I want to spider, right? Is the one that I want to use? Is it the first version or is it a subsequent version? Are they the same? Are they difficult? So I have to go. The interesting thing to do would be to point Gemini and say, what are the differences between these pages? Right? So, which is how I plan to do it, rather than try to figure it out manually, because that would take forever, and I don't want to. I don't want to do that. So, again, the awards are incredibly important, right? I think the awards are incredibly important. And many people in the chocolate industry find the craft chocolate industry find the awards to be incredibly important. I am not going to downplay their importance to anyone. It's an insane amount of work, right? So, in 2019, I think it was, they ran 25 rounds of competition. Some of the grand jury finalists, some of them were grand jury finalists, so they're not rounds. And I will go and I plan to go to that worksheet and say, you know, to organize them. So this is a regional final as opposed to a grand jury final. This is a regional as opposed to a grand jury. So I've got the data there that I can go and figure out. So when I go and point Gemini at the pages, I know where to point them. That's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm doing the work of figuring out what the working URLs are in these pages, is so I can know where can I point my agent in order to be able to go get the data that I want. Now I know the prompt to format it, how to get the data and transform it. What I then need to do is say, go to this page and get the data. Now, in future, what I plan to do, right, with this is, now once I have all the pages, what I can see is, what is the evolution of the category structure? How have the number of categories changed? Where did they split off? Right, and these are things that I can ask an agent to do for me, right? Because it's next to impossible to do by hand. Now, when I was doing this back in 2017, 2018, I did reach out to Albert Chow, who's one of the founders of Fifth Dimension Chocolate in London. And he is an expert on using SAS, which is a statistical program, which has a really, really good text manipulation capabilities. And we started using SAS to do this stuff. And uh, it wasn't as good at doing this as Gemini is. And one of the things that Gemini will do is it'll go through here and it'll say, oh, I found this interesting statistical correlation between these things, right? And while I will use that as inspiration for future research, when it came to this page, which I shared with everybody, it turns out that this analysis, right? So Frizham winning these awards, right? The top 10, I've edited this, so this is not the raw data, but the top 10 most awarded companies winning 6+ awards took home a total of 87 medals, roughly 1/3 of all the medals awarded. Right? That's my analysis based upon what it is that I learned from the Gemini report, right? So again, the TLDR, right? The concentration may indicate that while the broader ICA winner universe is diverse, it is anchored in a relatively small number of makers who consistently meet judges' expectations. And that's important. The important thing to know about the International Chocolate Awards is all we're talking about is the people who entered the awards. And can we take these things and make broader, right, broader, um, can we take them and use them to give us information about the market at large? Maybe, right? And that's something I am also exploring. I've started doing some extra work on the list of top 50 chocolate shops in the United States from the previous episode, saying what can we learn about them from them, right? And I think that based upon what I learn from that exercise, what I can do is I can go and do this. In the long run, one of the simplest things I can do is I can say, here's a list of chocolate companies, right? The names of the companies, where they're located, the website URL, right? And just put them into a list, right? So we understand better how many chocolate makers there are. I mean, going to the chocolate awards historically, right? Between the International Chocolate Awards, the Academy of Chocolate Awards, the Good Food Awards, right? The AVPA, the Agence de Valorisation des Produits Agriculture, these represent a universe of winners that, right, provide input data that we can work from. And so that's what I'm doing, right? So while the concentration may indicate that the broader universe is diverse, it is anchored in a relatively small number of makers. And it may also indicate that a small number of makers who enter, we got to figure this out, who or that, small number of makers that enter a lot of bars and a lot of categories, right? So that could be another way of interpreting the data. It turns out that Gemini is a little optimistic, and it said it's an indication of something else entirely that I don't get. But historically, most of that group of most awarded makers has changed as the industry and the competition itself have, let's get this in here, have evolved. Right? Consider Picari from Ecuador. Oh, hey, quick shout out from Mike King at Encore in Kansas City. How you doing, Mike? Thanks for making it here today. Um, and then the geographic summary, which is I did a table, right? But Gemini, I asked Gemini to generate something a little bit more about geographic distribution. So the United States home went 45 medals, Italy with 33, um, right? But most of the awards were in nut-based products: gianduja, creminos, and dragées, chocolate-covered and candy-coated nuts. Japan and Canada also demonstrated strength, and here were the categories. Entrance from Japan achieved well in ganache categories. Canadian makers fared well in flavored and micro-batch categories. These are things that would be fairly challenging for me to do by hand. And what I can ask Gemini to go do is do this analysis and then figure it out and pull out the parts that are interesting to me, and then spot check them against the work that's in the table, so I can make sure, oh yeah, it's reporting consistently about things, which is really, really important, as you might imagine. The increase in the number of producing countries, so countries where cocoa is grown as a production powerhouses, continues to be a significant trend. So what I have to do is, this is a trend based on 1 year. So I don't know that it's a trend. And I don't know where it picked up the trend. Right? I can ask it, I suppose. Right. But what we find is Peru, Taiwan, Thailand, Venezuela, Ecuador, and Colombia. I mean, 36 and 9, 45, 50, 54 awards, 54 out of 180. I mean, that's a lot of awards from producing country. And we see that two countries dominate: Peru, Taiwan. This is almost entirely Fuan. Um, so it's also important to understand that. So if we were to go and look, if I were able to go and say which countries cocoa won the most awards, and it would probably again be Nicaragua, because Frizz Home won so many awards. I mean, this is something that I noticed in doing this analysis in 2018. Frizz Home won a number of awards. He uses almost exclusively Nicaraguan cocoa. Therefore, we to look at the most popular producing country in the European bean to bar chocolate competition that year was Nicaragua, because of Frizz Home. In the Americas round, it was Picari, Ecuador, and Picari. And this is again the 2018. Um, in the Asia Pacific round, it was Taiwan because of Fuwan. So it's really, really fascinating to understand that, oh, the driver here might be an individual company that's doing extremely well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of grammar and spell checking and other things, spelling checking here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy these notes into the post for today's episode. And with that, we're at the end of today's episode. I want to point out that for every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, I put together a post. And if you are a member of the Chocolate Life, click on the green join button up here. There is the ability to comment on the page. Right? So you can do that at the bottom in the community, the member discussion at the bottom. There are hashtags, there are links to the International Chocolate Awards and the Academy of Chocolate Awards on Instagram. There are posts, which I've done, earlier posts, the Chocolate Life Live and other things that I've done, which on this topic. So if you want to go and look historically, these are from 2000. These are all around the 2018 awards cycle. You can go and take a look at what I had to say in 2018. And then before we jump, just the top level analyses. Yeah, which companies won what awards and how many? That's in the table, and I've talked about it. How many grand jury finalists won awards? Right. So I've done the split. How many entries, right, are on the grand jury finalists list that are not, and it's entries, not companies. How many entrants are on the grand finalist list who are not in the winners list? So did that. How are the awards distributed by country? How are the awards distributed by category? What about the special awards? I did this. How many companies won awards in both the International Chocolate Awards and the Academy of Chocolate Awards? That's a list. How many companies were given awards by the Academy that were not recognized in the ICAs? And this not recognized in the ICAs may be because they didn't enter, right? And it's almost certainly because they didn't enter. And I will add my notes just below this so that you can get that high level summary. And then what I will probably do is I will probably put together a concatenated I will put together a high level summary of my findings, which said, how many winners were there, how many unique winners were they, how many awards at each level, and so you can get. I will add those numbers to this part of the post later today or over the weekend, and then you'll be able to go here and figure it out. And with that, finally, this is the homepage of the Chocolate Life right now. This episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, is sponsored by the members of the Chocolate Life. You can go to the Chocolate Life now and join. Right? And free membership. There's always been a free membership since we started in 2018. Since I moved to Ghost in 2021, there are also premium memberships. If you want to support the work I do, and you can do so in the month of June. Today's my birthday, and that would be a great birthday present, everyone. So I'm doing this on Friday, June 27th. It's my birthday. That would be a great birthday present. You can support the work that I'm doing, and I will be able to continue to do this for the foreseeable future, and I will be able to afford the time to be able to do the in-depth analysis for every single one of the International Chocolate Awards, not just the one or two per year that I can currently devote my time to. And with that, I want to say thanks to everybody for joining me today, and to remind you, as I do at the end of every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, if you're working with chocolate and you are not having fun, and I hope you understand that I am having fun, even though it's this deep dive geek nerd new numbers kind of stuff, right? I am having fun. But if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Ciao, everyone, until the next time.